The Mass Effect trilogy is absolutely one of my favorite trilogies of all time when it comes to entertainment. It truly is one hell of an experience, and in my video essay above, I talk about why you guys should have played it. But in today's video, I'm going to be diving in and ranking all 20 Mass Effect squad mates from worst to best. Now, this will not include Andromeda. I have never beaten the game. I don't care to. Maybe one day I will. Planning on doing a whole Mass Effect game ranking on there. I'm like huge on Mass Effect. I've always been. The second game and the third game have always been some of my favorite games of all time, but now after replaying it through the Legendary Edition, I'm just like fully sucked in, and it truly might be one of the best, if not the best, video game experience I've ever gone through, from playing 1, 2, and 3 back to back to back. It was truly incredible. I'm excited to be here doing this, and if you guys are Mass Effect fans as well, or just in general fans of the channel, make sure to comment down below your thoughts and ranking of all the Mass Effect characters. And in general, if you don't want to do the full 20, let me know your top 10. Let's hear it down there, guys. But without further ado, let's jump into this ranking right now. Coming down at my number 20 is Kaden, who appears in Mass Effect 1, and you know, from then on, spoilers alert, kind of for the first game, he can die. A lot of these characters could potentially die. And that's kind of the best thing about Mass Effect, is your choices move from each game progressing forward and forward, and whoever survives moves on to the next game, whoever doesn't dies there, and you don't get that character progression. For me, Kaden has always been a character that I don't really care about. The first game, I find him to be completely boring, no personality whatsoever, and honestly, when you choose between him or Ashley dying, I chose Kaden due to the fact that the way that the story plays out, it kind of fits his character overall. I feel like for him to stay behind and make sure the bomb gets planted, I don't know more from him on that level, but I will say, when you choosing between him and Ashley, yeah, it's not that. It's kind of a hard choice because they're both pretty bad characters in the first game. At my number 19 is Moreneth. Now, this character only joins your squad if you decide to choose on her side, the Renegade level, instead of going on Samara's side. Now, I've always been more of a Samara fan. Moreneth has always kind of been a boring character to me as well. The one time that I did do it, I was like, I liked Samara more. Moreneth's just, you know, there's a cool, intriguing level to her, but especially the stuff that happens with Samara in the third game, I always feel like this is the more structured way of it working, especially when it comes down to Samara's character overall. So Moreneth ends up falling at number 19 just because, again, something that I just didn't really play around with too much. At my number 18 is Zaheed. Now, Zaheed's a pretty interesting character, and his one loyalty mission he has in Mass Effect 2 is actually quite unique. To be honest, he was actually a little bit lower on this list beforehand, and like I said, Kaden, I feel like people who actually kept him alive might have liked him a little bit more, especially from some of the stuff they did within Mass Effect 3, whether it's with Ashley and Kaden. I've heard there's a lot of development between Kaden on there, and again, Moreneth's kind of just where she is, but Zaheed for me is a character that, badass looking, cool as ever, but I'm always more intrigued with the alien characters and their species and stuff. But the way that you start finding out Zaheed's backstory, who he actually brought up, the mercenary groups that he brought to life, and how he was very much portrayed in there, he becomes an interesting character in that light. And for me, the reason he's at this placement, not all the way at the bottom, is because of Mass Effect 3 Citadel DLC and kind of some of the dialogue that you get with him inside that moment. It's interesting, it's nice, I enjoy Zaheed for what he is. I just wish with these DLC characters, with him and Kasumi, I wish they would have given them a little bit more depth when getting to talk to them, besides their loyalty mission and besides some of the little interactions you have with them in Mass Effect 3. At my number 17, it is Jacob Taylor. It always sucks being the boring human character, but Jacob Taylor I find to be an interesting one. He's kind of your best friend, Boy Scout type of way in the second game. Not saying that he's Shepard's best friend. I didn't want him to really be my best friend, but his loyalty mission is one of the more intriguing ones, as you find out that his father and this kind of father-son dynamic is so important to this. It's always one that I always enjoy going back and doing, and Jacob, again, is a character that I like, but I don't love, and I kind of wish that they would have, again, given him more to do, especially when it comes down to the third game. His side mission, he's completely sidelined on, and from then on out, you're just like, eh. But then, of course, some of the Citadel DLC does put him above Zaheed and the rest. But besides that, still kind of a boring character. Now, my number 16 is one of the brand new squad mates in Mass Effect 3, and that is James Vega. Now, for me, James is a cool character for the least, but sometimes some of his dialogue is a little bit too cringy. He's kind of the commando type squad dude, and kind of feels like he belongs in a Gears of War game compared to a Mass Effect game. Now, the reason that he is here is I do think he has some nice little personality when it comes to joining the N7 7 program coming about in there and kind of being Shepard's right-hand man. He's not afraid to kind of go at him and tell him, I disagree with this. I don't believe that you should do this. But again, even going on top of there, I still don't think Vega is a great character. And I feel like when you bring him in here, I would have rather that just put someone else from the past Mass Effect games as one of your squad mates here, because I feel like it would have fit better. And at my number 15 is Kasumi. Now, I definitely wanted to put her up here a little bit higher because I find her to be not just a cool character to have in your squad, and especially in the way that you use her within all the battles, but her loyalty mission very much has this James Bond aesthetic that I just love. On top of there, she's this cool slick assassin that, again, every time she comes into play, she always has this nice little level of intrigue, and everything with that gray box that you end up getting from her loyalty mission very much adds. Plus, she has this cute personality that really much plays with inside that Citadel DLC, which I cannot express enough is probably some of the best DLC that I've ever played inside a game. I cannot believe that was not in the original game when it first debuted, because I just played it for the first time and I was like, wow, this is awesome. Kasumi herself is an interesting character that I wish we would have just gotten more of, and if we would have, she probably would be way higher on this list. And at my number 14, we have the Krogan Grunt, the tank bred one. Now, Grunt is a really cool character, and I always find like the intrigue and the dialogue between talking with him in between missions, and especially in Mass Effect 3 when he comes into play, just very easy and talkative, and he very much the way that he's kind of learned from going from Mass Effect 2 really not knowing much of this world, and then kind of going into Mass Effect 3 and kind of talking to him and seeing that he's now leading his own group is just awesome. And if you get him to survive from there, it just brings some fantastic moments within some further moments in Mass Effect 3. I wish he would have joined our squad in here because I think Grunt is an awesome character, and he's just really funny, and he's very serious, but at the same time, like, what he's saying comes off as hilarious, and he just becomes a very memorable character that I always have to keep alive. To keep alive, I mean, I like to keep everyone alive as much as I possibly can, but Grunt is a great character. And at my number 13, we have Samara. Now, Samara is someone I mentioned a little bit earlier who I think is more intriguing than her daughter. Now, the reason that I come to Samara is because of the back history that she kind of goes into more on the Asari's race, because we've known a little bit about that and a lot more about that actually because of Liara and her mother, but Samara brings in this next level of intrigue with the Asari, and more about it when it comes down to all of her daughters and how powerful they are. And especially when it comes down to Mass Effect 3, if you end up keeping her alive in that mission that you meet her on, it becomes a really, you know, interesting mission per se, because she ends up becoming one of the more characters that I feel like really respects Shepard on a more, not friend level, but on a commander level. And I really like that because she always never goes in between. I've never romanced her personally. I know other people have, and it doesn't really look too interesting to me, but I've always found Samara to be one of the more cool characters when it comes down to your squad. And always talking to her and bringing her on missions always felt like a badass thing to do. And at my number 12 is a character that I absolutely hated in Mass Effect 1, Mass Effect 2, but absolutely in Mass Effect 3, kind of liked her a little bit more, and that is Ashley Williams. Never expected to say that in my life. When you play the first game, you're like, this character's god-awful. Then you play the second game, and the little bit of intrigue you have with her, still god-awful. Mass Effect 3, while they kind of get rid of the racist persona from her, from how she hates all the other alien species, kind of come to really care about her, especially when she gets injured. And if you keep her alive throughout this and you bring her on your squad, the intrigue and levels that she has throughout this, you know, you can romance her in the third game. I decided not to, but that friendship camaraderie that you really have with her and the rest of your crew really much fits well, and she fits in at number 12 because I feel like everyone here and above gets a lot of depth, more than you would really much say for other characters. And again, this is different for every person, because any person who plays Mass Effect is going to have a different level of intrigue because of who you decide to either become best friends with, romance, and all that. That's kind of the best stuff about Mass Effect, is everyone has a different playthrough. And for me, Ashley comes in at my number 12 because of all that, and the reasons that I really was able to kind of understand her on a more family level than I did within the second and first game, and I really just kind of liked her character a lot more in here personally. Again, 11 and up, this is where we kind of get to the best characters in the Mass Effect for me, and the number 11 is Javik. This is what I exactly wish they would have done with Kasumi and Zaheed, because what they did with those two characters, you couldn't talk to them in between missions. Javik actually interacted with the crew, interacted with each mission, interacted on the Citadel, which made it a very interesting aspect to hear a Prothean and how his thoughts and ideology is so different from, of course, our ideology right now in fighting the Reapers. It's really interesting, and all the little dialogue that you get between him and Liara, but him and Garrus, and even him and Ashley and other characters, Tali is too. it's very unique, and to really much learn about more about the Prothean race, which you've heard about through countless games, is just a fascinating thing, and Javik just becomes one of the more intriguing characters that, again, I wish they would have given more depth to Kasumi and Zaheed, because I personally believe they would be just as high up with Javik, if not higher. Before we round up my top 10, guys, make sure again to hit that like and subscribe button. If you enjoy video games and movies and TV, this is seriously the channel for you guys. I'm a geek just like you if you're watching this, and we should just keep talking movies and all sorts of geeky content over here on a daily basis, as well as make sure to comment down below your favorite Mass Effect squad mates. I'm so excited to hear your guys' thoughts. At my number 10 is EDI, the artificial intelligence that joins the crew at number 2. But of course, in number 3, she actually gets her full-on body, which Joker becomes obsessed with, and depending on how much dialogue you actually have with EDI, because I remember the first time I played, I didn't really like the choice that they did with that, and I was like, seriously, that's who's going to fill one of the squad mates. This time around, actually giving more dialogue to her, discussing with her, and talking with her, and really much furthering that relationship between her and Joker, I actually found to be one of the best aspects of Mass Effect 3, and it became a hard choice, because I always go with the destroy choice, that or synthesize, and this time I went with destroy. And I felt very hardship because I know that will end up killing EDI off, and it's hard to choose that. But for me, the fact that it actually made me care for her so much to the point where I actually, to make one choice that would end up killing one character that I really like, but for me I think is the best reasoning overall to maybe even keep Shepard alive in the end of the day. You know, it's a selfish choice, but I love EDI, but she's gonna fit at number 10. At my number 9, we have Legion, one of the coolest characters. In fact, when I find out that you could have a Geth on your team in Mass Effect 2, I was sold. I was always intrigued with that race, and I wanted to know more about them. And of course, through bringing Legion on into the crew and having that relationship with him, and then seeing where he pops up in 3 and how he really much gives his life, his entire race is absolutely phenomenal. And in this time around, actually bringing that relationship between the Quarians and the Geth and actually having them come together and actually not fight each other anymore is just beautiful. And I think for me, the reason I love Legion so much is because you actually get to learn about one of the more intriguing races inside Mass Effect. And when you learn more about the Geth and doing loyalty missions for him, and even doing just small little missions where you find out more about how the Geth were created, it becomes fascinating and actually paints a really cool picture when you look at the Leviathan and the Reaper, and then you look at the Quarians and the Geth. It is freaking awesome. Legion just becomes one of the more all-time best characters in Mass Effect lore. And my number 8 is the one Solarian you always get on your team, and that is Mordin, who honestly to God has one of the most sympathetic, most emotional moments in the entire gaming of Mass Effect. When you go and take him to, of course, the Krogan homeworld so he can heal and cure the genophage, it is one of the most emotional moments in all of Mass Effect. Knowing those final moments with Mordin is absolutely just heart-wrenching. But besides that, he is a hilarious character that has great singing skills, and on top of that, just becomes a character that you fall in love with. At first, you're like, this guy kind of talks too much, isn't annoying, but at the same time, he's a badass. He'll go to those dark levels if he has to, and I've always just really much appreciated Mordin more than most. I think Mordin is one of the characters that you get what you get if you give time to him, and if you don't, then he kind of just again comes off as that annoying character. And at my number 7, it is Miranda Lawson. Now, Miranda, again, is the character, the Cerberus bitch that you really don't get along with in the beginning of Mass Effect 2, but the more and more you start to become friends with her, or if you want to romance her, I've never done it personally, but if you start to become best friends with her, she really much becomes your right-hand man. I would look at her, like Garrus and her kind of right next to you when it comes to Mass Effect 2. And in Mass Effect 3, the way that you kind of, like, if you did her loyalty mission, you kept her alive, and the way that ties into Mass Effect 3, especially with everything that goes about her and her sister and father, it pays so much attention to that detail. And then, of course, within the Citadel DLC, you getting that final moment with your best friend, one of your closest friends in the Mass Effect world, it just really hit a lot of levels. I love when you bring her on the suicide mission in Mass Effect 2, and she tells the elusive man to pretty much go fuck himself. It's just so satisfying. And at my number 6, it is Jack. This is a character that when I was younger, I did not like. I was like, she has cool powers, but I just think she's trying too hard. But when you really get time to dive into her backstory and really get time to understand her more, it makes a lot of sense, and for me becomes one of the best characters in Mass Effect lore because you really understand where she is coming from, and it makes me so happy to see where she ended up in Mass Effect 3. And of course, when she finally, of course, just saying those goodbyes in the Citadel and seeing how she's actually teaching people to be better, it's just so heartwarming. And to see where her story started at when you do her loyalty mission, to see how she was very much just beaten and broken, and to see how she's kind of gaining that hope and optimism, but still being a badass at the same time, it's just wonderful. And I've heard a lot of people say that romancing her is some of the best aspects of Mass Effect. I've not done that yet, but I'm really happy to see that here. And at my number 5 is a character that can also die in Mass Effect 1 if you do not keep him alive, but I happen to, and that is Rex, one of the coolest Krogan that you will meet in the entire galaxy. I love Rex because he's so badass, he's so awesome, and while it sucks that he doesn't join your crew in 2 and only joins your crew in 3 for a little bit of a sliver of a moment, it's just great to have him there. Because in the first game, you know, you guys really don't count out as friends, but by the end of the first one, you guys are really close. Coming into the second one, where he sees what you are doing now, trying to bring Grunt in, and then 3, promising him that you will cure the genophage, really adds a bunch of different levels, and something that I really never thought I would be so attached to. Rex becomes an intriguing character, and he's just always, again, been there by Shepard's side, and again, on my playthroughs, he's just worked to wonders. And my number 4 is the coolest Drell you will ever meet, and that is Thane, the assassin, the hitman, whatever you want to call. God forbid, I love Thane to death. He's such an intriguing thing, and the fact is the Drell really much were never a big part of Mass Effect, so Thane was really much the only big persona and big perspective on their level, kind of like the way of Legion. But the fact of just the way that Thane looks, the way that he attacks, the way that he fights, it's just phenomenal, and to see how he comes all about in those layers. But I loved seeing his relationship with his son, and if you do that loyalty mission, it's so important. Adding a little bit more into there, when you go into Mass Effect 3 and see that he is officially dying from the disease that he let you know in the second game, it becomes very much emotional every time you visit him, every time you discuss with him and talk with him, and just seeing how he very much is happy within his life. And when he sacrifices his life for the counselor, it just brought tears to my eyes, because it's Morden and then Thane, and you're like, oh my god, 2 people at one time, I'm in tears. Of course, going into the Citadel mission, when his son brings in, you have that ceremony for him, and you get to go listen to the videos that Thane had sent you. It becomes more emotional because he's saying those goodbyes to Shepard, and Shepard never really got to say those goodbyes to him, and it really sucks. I mean, you get that goodbye if you go visit him in the hospital, and it's still emotional, but like, Thane really cared about Shepard, and it means a lot to see how much he did that, and it's insane that a game can do this for you. Of course, at my number 3 is Tali, who for me is the one that I usually romance, but this game through I didn't, and for the better, it probably worked. Tali is a phenomenal character that I think starts off really cute in the first game, but really much in the second one becomes into her own, and if you help her really much save her skin within her Quarian race and really much find out more about what her father and her were working on, it becomes so an emotional thing. And if you keep her with there and just see where she goes in 3, she grows into this character and one of the coolest Quarians that you will ever meet. I've always been intrigued with the Quarians. The Quarians and the Geth and the Drell have always been like my 3 favorite species throughout here, especially ever since I started Mass Effect. And for me, like, seeing where Tali's character ends up going, seeing who she ends up becoming by the end is just satisfying nonetheless. And if you romance her, it's really great to see that romance come between her and Shepard. But even if you've never seen that and you just see the friend level kind of stay there, it becomes very personal as well, because again, Shepard, the reason that I'm so motivated to get through these games and become friends with every person is because everyone is so intriguing. Everyone has such a great backstory, and Tali is one of them. And then finding out on this playthrough that her and Garrus are actually hooking up by the end, what? I never expected that. It was great, but I love Tali to death, and she's just one of the best characters in Mass Effect ever. Coming in at my number 2, it's going to go back and forth between who you guys have this with and very much who you guys side and romance with, and that's the best thing about Mass Effect, but my number 2 is Garrus. Garrus is pretty much Shepard's best friend through in and throughout. He's been there for him through thick and thin, and I love Garrus to pieces for that reason. I love him to death. I love the little mission that you get with him on the Citadel, where it's just you guys shooting shots at bottles and just having that great dialogue. And then the Citadel mission, you guys go to the bar and get drinks, and it's just very emotional to see kind of how that all goes. And if you take him on that emotional mission as he's helping Liara out, which kind of maybe I just spoiled my number 1, but it's emotional seeing his face, like he knows, like he kind of gives that Shepard that face, like, I'll protect her, you're okay, I get this, where this is going. And just seeing how the characters interact with who you're interacting with, it just makes for a very fleshed out world, and something that I always fell in love with in Mass Effect is seeing how that can just be brought to life in so many intriguing layers. Garrus is, again, Shepard's best friend through thick and thin, and if you've romanced him, I heard that's even a more phenomenal way to go through, but Garrus is just my best friend in this entire universe. Of course, at my number 1, and man oh man, I never thought I'd be saying this, because I've always liked this character but never loved her. And a big reason is because I was never a biggest fan of the original Mass Effect. I always rushed through that game, and this time around I took my time, I put a lot of effort into it, I actually beat the full thing. Like, 100%ed it, and I romanced Liara, and I fell in love with her. I'm trying not to cry because like everything they do with her character is so fleshed out and so well, and I very much feel like this is the canon romance that they really wanted to put forward. And especially if you've seen the teaser trailer for the next Mass Effect game, she's in there. It seems like she's looking for Shepard. I hope they continue that because I really want to see that. For me, Liara, Dr. Tassoni is absolutely the best character in all of Mass Effect and the best squad mate you can possibly have. And this is, of course, because of me. This is who I romanced this time around through. And getting to know her more personally in the first game and seeing out where that romance goes, but then going into the second game where she sees that you're alive, and then you end up doing the Shadow Broker DLC, which adds that more intriguing level, and that romance kind of sparks again. You say, I want this, but it's not right yet, and she says that. And then in Mass Effect 3, when she rejoins your crew back, it's just so exciting, because then when you're on that crew and you're having fun and, you know, you rekindle that love multiple times and you reassure her, like, this is what I want. Those moments you get with her are stuff that I will never, like, I will cherish for the rest of my life in gaming, because it's so well written. It really much feels like you were interacting and being inside a movie, and that's what the whole entire Mass Effect universe feels like. But just like the small little moments of just you guys talking and her saying, I want people to remember you. What do you want them to remember you by? And you say, you choose. Just your little moments on the Citadel, inviting her up to the Citadel DLC and playing the piano and just sitting there and pulling her in close. It very much, I'm a sap, guys. I'm a freaking sappy guy, and this just hits me in all the right ways. I love Liara. And in the final moments of, if you take her on that final mission in Mass Effect 3, and Commander Shepard tells her that he loves her as she's running to the beam and she needs to be evacuated, it is one hell of a mission that I will never forget. And that is the reason why I love Liara, and that's why she's at my number 1, and that is my Mass Effect squad mate ranking, guys. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. These are seriously all the best. This is a longer video, a little bit different than I typically would do, but I cannot stop talking about Mass Effect. My love for this franchise has gone back through the roof. I've always loved the games, and I've always loved this world, but the Legendary Edition is truly the best way to play it. And if you guys haven't checked out my video essay, or technically my review on that, go check it out up in the card above. And as well, guys, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button for more gaming content every single weekend. That's what I'm planning to bring those to you, and of course movies and TVs throughout the week. Thank you once again, guys, and of course until next time, stay classy.